So you watched two videos about focus groups, which hopefully you found interesting. And just to kind of summarize, it's a way to get some questions answered or some ideas about the right answers. You get reactions. You listen to language, but results are not projectable because it's such a small sample. 10 or 12 people at once is just not going to be projectable. But it helps give direction and focus. And these are ways, again, to contact research subjects by mail, which doesn't happen so much anymore unless you count the census. Telephone interviewing is still pretty popular, although a number of us find it somewhat annoying. A lot of political surveys are done by telephone interviewing. And individual interviewing is where you kind of walk up to people and ask them if they can spend a couple of minutes answering a few questions. And maybe you have to give them a coupon for ocean spray or something. Group interviewing we talked about. And then there's web interviewing, like a SurveyMonkey is another way to go. And the market testing, which is scientific. It's exactly what Pfizer does to test the efficacy of a new drug. Does everybody know what a placebo is? Right? Placebo is when you want to test a drug, you give half of the people a pill that has the drug in it, and half of the people a pill that has nothing in it, which is a placebo. And because taking the pill itself can have a psychologically beneficial effect, it winnows out or removes the variable of the pill taking. So you only measure the efficacy of the drug, just as, in a way, our good old Gregor Mendel did. So we looked at the Spring Database Project. We may not have yet, now that I think of it. It's the one that Kelly Ritchie and her group did, where they asked 3 questions. This is my database class that I teach in the spring. It's a class normally for juniors and seniors. And it really gets into database marketing, where the students create their own databases and do emails to the database, and we test subject lines. That's a very testable thing. And these are the subject lines that this particular team did. They did a really good job in this project. Okay. So remember, when you're doing research, your goal is simple. You really want to find out what people think and believe and feel. And so therefore, you do not want to influence the subject in any way. It's an attempt to find out the truth, which means that when you develop a questionnaire, you need to be very, very careful not to lead the subject, but to start very broad and general and kind of find out general things, and don't have questions that are obviously biased. Make sure all the questions are necessary, because you do not want to waste people's time. Cannot influence or lead answers. These are questions you could be asking. This is an example of a typical sort of questionnaire that you might do live, face-to-face, or you might do with your SurveyMonkey. So you want to find out who you're talking to, first of all. Some of these questions are more sensitive than others, like household income. They may say it's none of your business. You usually ask about a certain range. You can ask psychographic questions to help define the people even better. And then buying pattern questions. Do you ever purchase fruit drinks, for instance? Okay. So nowhere in here do you have to mention ocean spray. And we talked about the Twitter. So this is a quote from Bain and Company. Bain and Company, by the way, is the company that Mitt Romney worked for. You may remember him. Was a presidential candidate a while back. And here is a project line timeline for product development, where you start with general market research about what are the unfulfilled needs in the marketplace. You test concepts about the product. What if we gave you a product that did this, that tasted great and was less filling? You develop prototype products, you do some test marketing in actual markets, and then you launch the product. So we've taken a very broad use look at research. We finished primary research, and that's expensive. It requires some delicacy and skill to make sure you're doing it correctly and scientifically. Qualitative research for direction, quantitative research is truly scientific. Then you've got, finally, we said we talk about interpreting research. In qualitative, the moderator, the person who runs the focus group, starts the interpretation. He or she usually, after the group, will come back and meet with the clients and interested parties who are behind the mirror in the back room eating M&Ms and drinking Diet Coke, and occasionally eating a ham and cheese sandwich. The moderator will kind of summarize what he or she took away from the group. So it starts to pull things together. Otherwise, it's just a lot of verbiage to wonder about. And obviously, with interpreting quantitative research, the sample size correlates with projectability. And interpreting data can be overwhelming. Report only major findings. Make everything kind of simple to understand. And so this is a very detailed summary of research. It's a nice outline for everything we just covered today. So when we talk about presenting and tell them, this is tell them what you told them. Okay. So as we said, knowledge is power. Research, particularly quantitative primary research, is scientific, but you start answering your questions and building your story and trying to figure out what is going on. With secondary research, you do primary research after that, as we've discussed. Don't forget about checking out retail. And now we're going to stop and start again. And I'm going to finish by telling you about a real-life experience I had when I was running marketing at 1-800-Flowers.com.